And I'm white again, playing Alex Mari, 74. And I'll play e4. And okay, we'll repeat the same. Oops, sorry for hitting the mic. Repeating the same opening. This time, opponent plays the best move, knight c6. And I will play bishop to c4. Italian opening. There's a lot of options for white, even like on the third move, but also in this position. There's a fried liver, there's d3, there's knight c3. I think I mentioned, or I showed in a previous game, knight c3 does run into the center fork trick. I think that was a previous episode of the speedrun. So I'm going to play the very solid and probably one of the most common moves, pawn d3, leading into a more typical Italian. Knight g5, of course, is a more aggressive approach, leading to a fried liver. But d3 simply defends the pawn, prepares to develop the bishop. And this is one of the first openings I played as like a young child. I played this opening with a very clear plan in mind. And I think I'll try and demonstrate that plan going forward from here. So I'm going to play knight c3. Now there's no center fork trick. Knight takes e4, I can take back with pawn. But here my opponent is actually trying to attack me right away. Knight f2 or knight takes f2 is a threat. Also bishop takes f2, of course. Now in this position, knight g4 is not actually a great approach for black, very simply because white can castle. And I really don't mind if black takes twice on f2. We might see this play out. I did want to note that if the knight were to stay on f6, like going back here, if black were to castle, my plan was going to be bishop g5 and knight d5. And yeah, when I was younger, I won a lot of games with that plan. But we do see knight takes f2. And I think this will be very instructive because from a pure point value perspective, when we think about how much the pieces are worth, black traded knight and bishop for rook and pawn. So you would think that's 6 points for 6 points. But pieces aren't always directly matched their values, especially earlier in the game. And generally in the opening and middle game, the minor pieces are much more valuable than the rook, simply because the rooks take a long time to actually activate. And my minor pieces in this position can hopefully very quickly orchestrate some attack. But it's still a question how to proceed from here. And I would really like to develop my bishop. I like the move bishop to g5. I'm going to play this because there's no... It's not legal for black to play pawn f6 because the f-pawn is pinned. So black has to either play this or this to save the queen. And with both moves, it's already looking a little bit ugly for black. I think my follow-up is going to be knight d5. Yeah, I think we're already seeing the consequences of black's trade on f2. I remember when I first saw this, like as a younger player, it did look scary because the king on f2 seems very exposed. But the thing is, the king isn't weak if the opponent can't exploit it. And in this case, there's really no great way for black to exploit my king. And meanwhile, yeah, it's black's pieces who are getting exploited here. So now the knight is pinned and attacked twice. Now I should note, when I play knight d5, I do block my bishop. So this makes f6 available. But the problem is if black plays f6, I'm going to have a discovered check against the king. So I actually don't see a great way for black to get out of this. Sorry, I just had some Vietnamese food, some food stuck in my teeth. What to do? I might cut that out. Or not, I don't know. Okay, so we do see f6. So now we're in a position where any knight move I play, there's, what, 8 legal moves with this knight. So every single knight move will be a check. Now, the most obvious approach just seems to take the knight, and that would be double check. But I want to pause here and just make sure. If I take the knight, black is going to play this, and then my knight and bishop will be hanging. So I might have to concede some material back. The other approach is I can take the pawn, force the king here, and then move back and try and win the knight. Yeah, there's a couple nice looking approaches here. Yeah, the thing is, after takes here, I guess I could take the bishop. Yeah, that might be the simplest, and then we're trading. Although black takes here, and then my knight is trapped. Yeah, I don't want to overthink this too much, but I do want to like play the most principled approach. I'm actually leaning towards taking the pawn. Even though it's going to open the f file, it does look a little bit scary. Taking the pawn will force king h8, and then I'll move back, and black is in the same predicament. I should be winning a lot of material there. And yeah, the nice thing about double check is the king has to move. There's no way to like block the check or capture because there's two pieces attacking the king. So this is the only legal move. And generally, when you have only one legal move, you should realize the situation you are in and play it pretty quickly. Yeah, the bishop can't be blocked either. So okay, now I'll move back. And now there's no pawn to obstruct my bishop. And yeah, there's not really any easy way for black to exploit my king. I mean, my knight's pinned. It'd be nice for black to jump over the knight and take the bishop, but that's not quite legal. This is not spell chess. And even if the rook tries to defend the knight, I'm gonna take, and yeah, I'll be up at least a minor piece after all said and done. Another thing I want to mention is with my king on f2, generally if I do have time, I would like to put it back on g1, essentially get the king back to the castle square, even sometimes go to h1, where it would be the safest. But for now, that's it's not really necessary. And now I do want to share, I'm not sure if this will play out in the way I'm dreaming of, but with my bishop already on a very nice diagonal and potentially controlling this g8 square, there's going to be some possible mating ideas, especially if my queen can come in, especially if I can get a knight to g6. So I'm imagining, like, if I do take on e7 and maybe get my king back and either get my queen to h5 or maybe maneuver to h4, then the combination of queen, bishop on c4, and then knight coming to g6 could be some pretty brutal checkmates. But yeah, still many moves away from that happening. I'm hoping at least one game in this episode will end with checkmate. Maybe I'll keep playing games until I get one checkmate on the board. Hoping the opponent doesn't resign here. But I do understand, like, sometimes when you get a losing position from early on, it's not always the most fun to play out. But one tip I will give for newer players is if you are losing, you should play it out, because a lot of players do struggle to convert winning positions. And yeah, when I was younger, my chess coach had a rule for me, like, never resign. And I think that's one of the ways I learned how to just put up a lot of resistance from really bad or losing positions. And over the years, I've saved a lot of positions, even much worse than this from the black side. Opponent's taking time. Maybe Maybe trying to find their miracle resource, maybe just crying. This is one reason why I sometimes like over the board chess more than online chess. It's online, it's just the time ticking, nothing's really happening, but over the board chess you can see your opponent suffer. Okay, now do I want to actually take the knight? So I'm realizing with the last move, I have another option of knight takes pawn. And this can lead to the potential fork. I don't think I'm really risking much. Like when I take the pawn, I do allow rook f8 check, but then I can move back to g1. And then meanwhile, yeah, the knight's still pinned. I'm going to take the pawn. Like even though taking on e7 with either piece would have won material, in general, you don't necessarily have to take a pinned piece right away. Because, yeah, the piece can't really move. And rather than catching a small fish, I want to catch one of these big fish. Now my minor pieces. I mean, this is a dream scenario with just having all the minor pieces applying maximum pressure from early on. Like every single piece is playing a role. Like even though this bishop is blocked, it's hopefully going to play a role pretty soon. So move back to g1. And I'm not getting in knight f7 as I was hoping, but now the knight is less defended, so bishop takes e7 is a monster threat. Not to mention my queen's ready to come in. So there's going to be ideas of like knight g6, maybe eventually. Okay, so the rook moves back, and now I do have the fork. I'm looking for potential mates, but yeah, mate will be coming, especially like once I win the queen. I think everything is going to crumble for black. Yeah, king g8's the only legal move here. It's possible we'll see resignation because this gets really bad. Like king g8 I take, and then the knight will be hanging. Yeah. Okay, so 15 moves. I think this is a very important lesson. It goes to show why this trade is not good, especially for the side that is conceding the minor pieces. And in a similar manner, I had the same option to play knight g5 in this position. And this is not effective for the same reason, because black can castle, and after takes, then it's black getting the minor pieces, two minor pieces for rook and pawn. And this would be much preferable for black. So yeah, I hope this lesson is valuable to people watching, because I know there's a lot of people out there that think it's a fair trade and maybe would think that it's good to expose a king like this. But yeah, usually in the middle game, actually in most stages of the game, two minor pieces are more valuable than rook and pawn. Going back to this position, I want to note that knight g5 is a perfectly acceptable move because black can't castle to defend. And this is just a main line. It's yeah, basically the fried liver attack after d5, and after takes, the main line is knight a5.